Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Stewartry Area Committee, 1st of September 2020. Meetings now are being held differently due to public health regulations, and due to COVID-19, we're unable to have too many people in the one place. Hence, some members, including myself, are using Microsoft Teams to participate in this meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "speak" in the Teams chat book or raise your digital hand, and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request to speak so that we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "leave" in the Teams chat function and then join, and this allows us to monitor which members are present. Thank you. Could I now ask Claire, the clerk, for the Serendent and apologies, and also confirm which members are in the room and which are linking by Microsoft Teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Currently you have 6 members present. You've got Councillor Stitt in the room, and you've got Councillors Blake, Campbell, Howie and Maitland via Teams. Councillor Drysdale is advised that she'll be along a bit later, she's running late. Councillor Davidson and Councillor James currently not present.
We got a message, Claire. Councillor Davidson wishes to submit his apologies for the meeting. Something's cropped up at the last minute. I also confirm my agreement to the participation of those members named as participating remotely. So, item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? And remember, it's entirely a matter for an individual member to determine if they have to declare an interest, and if so, whether or not they need to leave the meeting during that relevant item. Any declarations of interest, please? Item 3, minute of the previous meeting. Members have had a minute of a meeting of way back 20th November 2019 for noting, as this was approved at full council on the 25th of June 2020. So the minutes noted. Item 4. The Stewartry Area Committee Discretionary Budget Performance Monitoring from 2019 to 2020. This report asks us to know performance monitoring information from projects and initiatives which received support from the Stewartry Area Committee discretionary budget in 2019-2020. This funding was allocated according to members' local priorities, these being signature galas including music festivals, sport including sports grants and individuals of promise, key local facilities that contribute to the well-being of the community and increase social contact, especially for older people, including physical improvements and support costs. Youth development activities for young persons aged 12 to 25. And the report lists the wide variety of projects funded by this area committee and the wide range of communities benefiting from the delivery of all these projects. Monitoring is an important part of the total grant-making process, as members want to ensure that our communities benefit from the use of public money. And I'm pleased to see that 33,000 citizens have benefited from the delivery of 31 local projects and initiatives, and over £37,000 has been invested in projects and initiatives in our Stewartry area. Do members have any comments on this report?
Chair.
Also, Kimberly Phillips, or what? Yes?
Sorry, Chair, you've got Councillor Campbell who wants, and I think it was actually a declaration of interest, and also Ian Howie.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair, for your intervention. I'll take Councillor Campbell first.
Thanks, John. As you were moving alarming pace there when it came to the declarations. It was just to make a declaration on this agenda item in relation to the Bakehouse Community Arts Centre. My wife is a trustee of the Bakehouse. However, I don't see any need to withdraw from discussion on this report.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Howie?
Thank you, Chair. Kimberley, we noticed that we've been asked to note that 33,000 citizens benefited. Now that's well over double the population of the Stewartry. And how robust is our monitoring and going back to these organisations and checking up on them? As I say, that's well in excess of double the population of the Stewartry. And I just want to know what we are doing to gauge that these figures are actually accurate, or are organisation just plucking figures out there when they're putting these applications in? Do we go back and check exactly what they've delivered on?
I mean, if through you, Chair, if I can respond to that, we do ask the organisations to give us the figures, and we do mostly trust that they are providing us with accurate indications of the number of people. I do know that some of the events and projects, they also include tourists that visit the area. So, it might not just be about the population of the Stewartry. In terms of the robustness, each of the ward officers, has a close relationship with the organisations. And I think if they felt there was anything that didn't fit quite right or didn't seem right, they would certainly be in a position to go back and question that. I mean, it's something we can certainly look at, again, if members feel that would be a good use of resources and time to go back and look at ways that we're capturing the information, because I appreciate for some of the activities, it may be quite difficult to monitor. For example, if it was a community gala or a signature gala in one of the towns, it's quite hard to estimate the numbers.
Thank you for that explanation, Kimberley. Councillor Stitt, do you want to speak?
If you don't mind, Chair, I didn't get in quick enough. It's item 5, page 37, appendix 2, under Stewartry Priority Sport. I am actually Chair of Stewartry Sports Council at present, but I don't think I'll be leaving it, but I just thought I'd bring it to your attention.
Thank you for that, and you're a very good Chair of Stewartry Sports Council, you certainly are, and I am a member of that, so I suppose I should also declare an interest. Thank you. So, any further questions on item 4?
Chair, could I... Sorry, you go, Dougie, sorry.
Is that okay, John, for me to come in?
Yes, Councillor Campbell, please.
Right. It's just to remind members about my declaration in relation to the Bakehouse, but just on the point raised by Councillor Howie in relation to number of attendees. I know that for the Bakehouse it's standard practice to gather in figures in relation to attendees, and also to circulate questionnaires to attendees, particularly in relation to where they've come from, and they do this for marketing purposes, for future events. It's I think a good example of the accuracy of figures for organisations. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And of course, as Kimberley said, some of these figures are for festivals like the Dalbeattie Days or Castle Douglas Civic Week, which would have also a lot of external visitors to the region. Welcome, Councillor Drysdale. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for being late. Just to say, I'm also a member on the committee for Stewartry Sports Council, so I ought to declare an interest. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howie, your hand's still raised. Are you wanting to speak?
Apologies, Chair, just didn't take it down.
Thank you. With no further questions on item 4, can we move to the recommendations? Members are asked to firstly note the performance monitoring information, projects and initiatives that receive support from the Stewartry Area Committee, and secondly note that over 33,000 citizens are benefiting from the delivery of 31 local projects, and over £37,000 has been invested in projects in the local Stewartry area. Thank you. Moving a little less quickly on to item 5. Stewartry Area Committee discretionary budget arrangements for 2020-21. This report is to agree the arrangements for the allocation of the Stewartry Area Committee discretionary budget for the financial year 2020-2021. The budget is £60,112 and a whole 22 pence. Before we begin discussing this report, I want to set out the context of it. There are parameters for a discussion based on the strategic framework agreed at full council on the 30th of July 2020, which allows area committees to allocate to events and projects which reflect our council's unique civic leadership role. Also, events, projects and facilities which make a direct contribution to the council plan in a locality. And finally, events, projects which support the region's recovery and restart plan. Another important part of this context for this discussion is that at an elected members' seminar from back in at the 24th of June 2020, members considered their priorities in details, drawing on background information and discussing the important events and issues across the Stewartry area. These being key local facilities, signature galas including music festivals, sport, youth, remembrance days and armed forces, and finally COVID-19 renewal start. An option which incorporates these conclusions is set out in Appendix 2, but it's there for discussion. It's not been agreed. Kimberly Phillips, our ward officer, is available to answer any questions from members. So, any questions, members? With no questions, surprisingly, shall we just move to the recommendations? That means we accept the allocation.
Councillor Young, Chair, sorry, do you think I could just ask a question? Sorry. It's in the... Thank you, Chair. Could have come, I do apologise for being late. I had got the wrong time. I noticed that, now the phone is going. It could come under the previous one, but just to confirm with Kimberly, who's been very helpful with regards to the spend for one of the activities, which was the youth work, could I just have confirmation from yourself, Kimberly, that we can definitely carry forward monies that we didn't spend this year to next year's budget, because I'd hate that money to get lost in the system. I'm sure it won't, but the groups who are involved in the youth work and the youth activities are just keen to know that we can carry that monies forward to the next fiscal period. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kimberly.
If I can come in through yourself, Chair, what you normally agree to at Stewartry Area Committee is that because you give out money throughout the year, you normally allow 12 months from when you receive the award. So that gives you 12 months to spend the allocated award. Does that help?
Can I come back in, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I think we've only spent a third of it, Kimberly. Due to COVID, we have been unable to have events. So I'm probably looking for guidance from officers as to how we can proceed. You know, am I best to speak to Kirkcudbright Development Trust or to the youth teams within the council? If possible, are we able to reallocate those monies to those groups so that it can be spent because they have the ability to adhere to social distancing procedures for the youths in the area? I just feel really bad that we've only spent a third of it because of a situation out with our control, and therefore those monies are going to go, you know, down the tube, so to speak. And, you know, Stewartry doesn't have that many activities for young people. There's a small bit of youth work started up again, but it's been very much needed recently. And I'm just wondering if there's a way about it, or possibly the legality state that we can't carry those monies forward, nor can we allocate them to different groups, Kimberly. So I'm just looking for clarification or guidance from other members with more experience as to how we can manage the situation as it stands. As I say, we've spent just over 1,000, and we agreed a budget of 3,000. Perhaps, Ingrid, you might be able to help if Kimberly can't. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. My take on it, for what it's worth, is that the unspent 2,000 will be carried over and added to the 3,000, so that you have 5,000 for youth development activities. But perhaps Kimberly should, or Ingrid can clarify.
Is it okay if I come in at this point? I think the agreement is with the organisation who expressed an interest. So it might be that we need to go back and just take a little bit of advice if that money isn't going to be spent, but you want to reallocate it to another organisation who can take that forward. And I think we could perhaps do that. But I'll need to take a little bit more advice about that. I think we all need to be sympathetic to the situation. Obviously, you've not been able to run the activities as planned. In terms of the additional £3,000 that members suggested through the seminar that they might want to allocate to youth, my understanding of that was that it might be another organisation in another part of the Stewartry that might want to replicate some of the good practice that's been carried out in Kirkcudbright so far. And again, they will need to take account of any of the new guidance and restrictions that might be placed upon them. So that's my take on it, and happy to have a conversation outside of the meeting if that would be helpful, a more detailed conversation about what we need to do next, Pauline, if that's okay.
I think that's a good idea, Kimberly, if you and Pauline can discuss this offline, or out with the meeting, should I say.
Yeah, happy. Thank you, John.
Councillor Maitland?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would like a little bit of help with paragraph 314, please, from the officers. There are indeed new funds coming through, which we haven't had before. I can't remember how we actually discuss and allocate the region-wide coastal benefit fund. We had a discussion about that maybe a year and a bit ago, and I can't remember how that is actually doled out. Could you remind me about that, please?
Can any officer assist Councillor Maitland?
I might be able to answer part of that question. The Region-wide Coastal Benefit Fund opened for applications earlier in the year, and I believe those applications were scored, and then the successful applicants have received their funding. I believe there is going to be another round of Coastal Benefit Funds, but I've not got any further details about that at this time.
Is that sufficient?
John, yes. I mean, it is. It's just a question of whether or not there is any further input from the area committee, as opposed to simply going on a region-wide basis. So it was. I mean, I do see that there are more sources of money, and I think there probably are. Actually, as well as having more sources of money, there's probably less of an opportunity, like Pauline's pointed out, to actually spend. So we might not be quite as pushed as we have been in the past.
That would be a healthy position to be in. Councillor Howie.
Thanks, Chair. Kimberly, COVID renew restart the 10,600. How do you envisage this being allocated, and will it have to come back to committee for sign-off?
That's entirely up to members to decide, and you could decide how you want to do that today. You could open for expressions of interest from the community, but you would need to probably set some parameters around that. or you may also want to wait. I could come back at a later committee date once we've got a bit more information, because I understand things are emerging. Even since we had the members' seminar, things have changed. We do have a response, renew and recovery team in place. There is a recovery and restart plan. And I know we're starting to get feedback now about how COVID-19 has affected some of our businesses, our economy, the schools and learning. And, if we looked at some of the recovery themes, that might be a way forward. But it's entirely up to members to decide. And I was hoping that there might be a steer on that today, that I can support members with making decisions.
Thank you, Kimberly. Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, Chair. I'll just withdraw my question, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in again. I'm sorry to keep bringing things up, but we did get an email just to clarify for members and anyone else that might have some interest in this. The Crown Estate has issued another £150,000 fund for coastal communities, which in effect only affects Gatehouse and Kirkcudbright, but the closing date for that fund is the 12th of October. All the community councils have been emailed by Hazel Kerr kindly, but I don't know if that fund, and again Kimberly and Ingrid might be able to help us with this, has gone out to specific groups across the region, but specifically the Gatehouse area, Borg area and Kirkcudbright area. I think it's really important. We need to get this information out there with only a month and 2 weeks before the deadline, and the website to get the information from and the forms for applying is Foundation Scotland website. So if we can pass that to all our groups, I think it's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale, and I agree with that. I wonder if it's possible to circulate that information to all community councils, or has it already been done?
It's gone out to community councils, but not the groups, Chair.
Thank you. Would it be a good idea to look at Appendix 2 on page 37, just so we're clear what we're proposing in our allocation of funding? Appendix 2, page 37. So we're giving £5,000, we're allocating £5,000 to the Fullerton Theatre, also to Glen Kenn's Community Arts Trust, and also to the Mill and the Fleet. And we've got £8,000 to allocate to unspecified key facilities. So I presume we hold that funding in reserve. Then we're giving £11,214 to the 23 signature galas, including music festivals. That money is allocated on a population basis, if I remember. The Stewartry Sports Club is again getting £7,166. Youth Development £3,000, and retaining £5,000 for unknown projects and events. Now, I checked with the Wreath of Remembrance Sunday, and historically this was funded from area committees. So £100 for that, and then £10,600 for support for organisations for COVID restart and renewal. Are we happy with that outline proposed allocation for the Stewartry, for the discretionary budget?
Sorry, I'm just struggling to write type and it won't come up. Sorry about that. May I come in?
Certainly, Councillor.
Well, it was just really to find out. I mean, we're not having another meeting until I think November, and certainly the information that I'm receiving generally from people is about the sort of the signature galas, is that people are very reluctant to go down that line. I think because they're scared of things getting cancelled, and I can see that money might well not be spent this year. And there may be other things that we really do want to support. So I'm just wondering whether between now and November that we ought to have a rethink so that we could immediately agree in November to something different. I don't know what's been happening, it might be useful to hear. But I'm a little concerned that we will simply not get this spent because of the nature of the problems that we've got this year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maitland. I see where you're coming from. Can I ask the officers, must we make a decision today or can we postpone decision making?
If you like, I'll speak to that, Chair.
Thank you.
So it is, up to members if they want to take any decisions around any of the allocations to the areas that you have highlighted today, or again, you could take that to committee in November for further consideration.
Thank you. Has anybody got any thoughts on this allocation? Should we allocate the funding to the key local facilities, for instance, at Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I'm kind of in Councillor Maitland's camp on this in terms of the allocations, because it not only will it be a reluctance on groups and organisations to organise events, but it will also probably still be governed by COVID regulations and guidance. And thinking about the next area committee in November, I think it'd be worth putting in some sort of flexibility on this, if that's possible. And I think we have to bear in mind, as we'll all be aware, that the number of cases of COVID are creeping up steadily. And in the winter, I think we could see a resurgence of COVID. So my views on it are that we can go ahead with the allocations as they are just now, but can we review that in November and perhaps we'll have a clearer picture at that time and we consider reallocating funding. I think probably this will have to be, the officers will have to go away and have a look at this and try and determine the governance issues around this. But in terms of COVID, it's a continually moving picture. And just looking down this table, they all pretty much involve people coming together. So I would be sceptical if any of the money would be utilised. So that's my thoughts on it. Interesting to take feedback from other members.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Stitt?
I think I'm quite agreeing with the lines that Jane and Dougie are taking. I think a couple of months down the line, we'll know how serious the problem is, or if it's got a lesson. So I think we could have a good couple of months to think things over and re-look at this in November.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. I think that's the feeling of the meeting. Can we move to the recommendations, bearing in mind that viewpoint? First of all, members are asked to note the discretionary grant budget available to Stewartry Area Committee is £60,000, so we can note 1. 2, note the strategic framework agreed by full council on the 30th of July as detailed in paragraph 3.5 and appendix 1. So recommendation 2 noted safely. 3, agree the priority areas for the allocation of the Stewartry Area Committee 2021 discretionary budget as set out in paragraph 3.8, so we can safely note recommendation 3. 4, consider the proposals in appendix 2 and agree the allocations. So can we amend that to consider the proposals in appendix 2 and agree the allocations are reviewed at the next meeting? Or at the meeting in November. Is that noted?
Chair, can I just advise that Councillor Campbell wishes to speak? as does Councillor
sorry.
Maitland.
Councillor Campbell, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering, John, if we need to adjust 2.3 in terms of, 2.4 in terms of agreeing the allocations. I suppose we need to make a decision whether we agree the allocations today and review them in November, or whether we postpone agreeing on the allocations subject to review in November. But I think whatever decision we make, it needs to be reflected in the recommendations.
I agree, Councillor Campbell. And somebody else wanted to speak?
Please, Chairman, yes. What I was going to say is that, I have no difficulty with these allocations as they're proposed. It's just that they're not going to be taken up. I suspect probably Kimberly will be able to tell us now how many people have come forward to say, yeah, we're definitely going to run a signature gala. And I think it'll be on the fingers of one hand, max. I might be wrong. It might even be that we should agree what is going to be spent. If people come forward with things here within those allocations there, then we should not say no. But I'm really saying that let's be ahead of ourselves when it comes to November and think about what people might like to do. It could be as simple as saying, right, well, we'll have a socially distanced coffee morning, or we'll do something, but it won't be until the early in the new year. But they've got the option of coming forward to say that if it's obvious that we haven't spent the money. But I would like to hear from Kimberly now whether or not she thinks that we are going to have these signature galas coming forward. And if we aren't, we agree the priorities as they stand there, but in November we have a selection of proposals to take up the slack of what is unspent, so that we're ahead of the game is really what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. Kimberly, have you any thoughts here?
Yes, I do. So last year you allocated a similar amount, or if not the same amount of funding to signature galas, including music festivals. And out of the 24 opportunities, I think there was 24 in total, there were 12 expressions of interest. So there was, half of the expressions of interest. Well, there was only half of the expressions of interest in terms of the number of opportunities that were available. Obviously, this year has been really different, and I know that some of the, a lot of the galas were cancelled. So, for example, Beatty Civic Days was one of the big ones, and that was cancelled. And I've not had any other organisations or gala committees coming forward to say that they're really looking for funding, except for one or two who want to do something a little bit different. So instead of having the local duck race, they're running a scarecrow competition, or another suggestion was about giving out some prizes. And at the members' seminar in June, you talked about people being more creative and thinking a little bit differently. But obviously, even since June, things have changed and things have been cancelled that we would have expected to go ahead. So it's entirely up to members whether they feel that is still a priority, or whether they, whether they feel they want to revisit the priorities, or whether they just want to relook at it all in November when you've had a couple more months to see how the land lies.
Thank you, Kimberly. So we're really looking at a form of wording for recommendation 4, and I think we're in agreement that when an initiative or a project is capable of going ahead and we have allocated funding to it, then we should provide that organisation with that funding as long as they abide by the existing COVID regulations. So recommendation 4, consider the proposals in Appendix 2 and agree to the allocations to where projects are going ahead subject to existing COVID regulations. Would something like that be suitable to the members? Pauline.
Yes, Chair, this is just a suggestion. Thanks for letting me in. To me, and I don't know whether this has to go through at full council, because I see they made some headline recommendations and we agreed it. Would it be last month? Sorry, I can't find the page now. But would we legally be allowed to change the wording, signature galas, including music festivals, simply to events and activities? Because things like football are allowed to go ahead socially distanced in groups, family groups, etc. So you could organise various events that are now legally allowed to go ahead according to the Scottish Government and Westminster. So could we not change the wording of signature galas, including music festivals? Thank you.
And I hope officers will correct me if I'm wrong. My feeling is that what was passed at full council we can't change.
I understand. Thanks.
Are the officers content, is Claire content with the recommendations for the amended version of it?
Yeah, can I just come in there, Chair? Appendix 1 provides the strategic framework that was agreed at full council. So that's the wording that you can't change. Appendix 2 should then reflect that Appendix 1, but you've obviously got a bit of manoeuvrability, if that's a word, and how you allocate. I hope that helps.
Yes, Claire, thank you, that does. We wish to move on, though. So have we got a suitable version of recommendation 4? Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, John. As you'll see from the chat, Jane and I had a brief discussion about adding the caveat on COVID. I just wanted to check that Jane is content with that, because she said that that would happen anyway by law. It's just for clarification for Jane that my thinking